to a horror reaction video. This is from Broccoli Animations. We're gonna start with the first story. I will leave the link to
My
the
windshield
stories
wipers
in
couldn't
my
keep up
bio.
with the rain beating down on my car.
Decided to bring.
I was driving
back.
through winding mountain roads on my way home from a business trip. I promised my wife I would make it home tonight, but the rain was coming down so hard it made the road almost impossible to see. I had been driving all day, and I could feel myself beginning to doze off. I rolled down my window a little so the cold air would jolt me awake, but soon after I was nodding off again. The roads curved around steep cliffs and tall trees. I decided to stop because it would be too easy to drive off the road and end up wrapped around a tree, or worse. I looked for signs for upcoming towns. I hoped to come across a McDonald's or something so I could grab something to eat and get a coffee. If I had 30 minutes to an hour to regroup and re-energize, I'd make it home to see my wife and daughter. Suddenly, a road sign listing upcoming rest stops zoomed by me. It only listed one gas station, a Motel 6, and a diner.
Yeah, that's how you know.
I decided to stop at the diner. I drove for a few more miles until I entered a small area with 3 streetlights. On one side of the road, there was the motel, and on the other, there was a gas station and a diner. I parked at the diner and went in. The diner was next to dead.
Low-key looks like a
Beside
Hooters.
me, an
Those are
old
Hooters
man
colors.
was sitting at the bar eating a slice of apple pie and talking to the cooks, and a group of teenagers loudly laughed in one of the booths. I made eye contact with one of the waitresses. She was older than me, and her skin drooped with age. Her cheeks were stained a bright pink with blush, and her lips were a bold red. It looked like she tried to put on fake eyelashes, but put the glue in the wrong place. My wife always complained about false lashes and how hard they were to wear. The waitress gave me a big smile, revealing a little lipstick on her front teeth. She opened her mouth to speak. "Sit anywhere you'd like, hun." In response, I smiled and nodded.
That southern accent strong.
I sat in a booth as far away from the pack of teenagers as possible. Within a minute, the same waitress was at my table. "Hey there, handsome," she smiled, her lipstick-stained teeth wiped clean. "What can I get you to drink?" "I would love some coffee," I told her.
Bro.
"What's a good-looking man like you doing way out here all by yourself?"
I get home to my
driving
wife.
home from a work trip.
Promised
the missus I'd be home tonight.
There you go.
What's a good-looking woman like you doing way out here?
Don't flirt. He just messed up.
My wife and I agreed we could flirt with other people if it were just for fun. Darla's pink cheeks took on a red undertone.
No. And no, it's not no insecurity. That just opens doors to things you don't want. Look at the crack on my lip. Don't worry about all that. But listen, flirting for fun, I get people do that, but that is a dangerous thing to do, especially in this day and age. They catch feelings for you, it's raps.
"Oh, stop." She smiled at me and lightly slapped my shoulder with the back of her hand.
Mm-hmm.
"You're lucky it's only raining, not snowing. You'd have to stop for the night if it was snowing." "Well, rain's no joke either. I could barely see through my windshield getting here." That, in combination with driving all day, I needed a break. "Do you want anything else, or just that coffee?" I told her I needed a moment to look over the menu. She winked at me as she left. She brought me a cup of water and a mug of coffee. As she placed the cups on the table, her eyes widened and she tried to make eye contact with me. Her attempt at intense eye contact made me uneasy, so I avoided it, but she ducked her head to meet my eyes. "Any idea what you want to eat?" "Yeah. Can I please have the cheeseburger?" I ordered. She scribbled on her pad. "Fries okay with that?" I nodded.
Trying to eat you, bro.
She winked at me again as she left. As I waited, I texted my wife to give her an update. Darla was giggling with another waitress, and they kept looking over at me. I gave them an uneasy smile. I regretted flirting with her that little bit.
Goofy. See what I said?
One of the cooks yelled out, "Orders up for Darla's next baby daddy." I felt the blood.
The hell you preach? he just said baby daddy. Bro, I'm running out of the restaurant. I'm hightailing it out of there. This man just messed up.
Rushed to my cheeks. The waitresses giggled. Oh, leave me alone, Darla told the cook playfully. She brought me my burger. She stroked my arm and said, enjoy, with what I think was supposed to be a seductive look.
Put it out.
I nodded and barely smiled back in response. While I ate my burger, I called my wife. I figured that would cool Darla off if she saw me talking to my wife. My wife and I chatted while I ate my burger. She told me how bedtime went with my daughter and how much they missed me. I assured her I would be home as soon as possible after I finished my burger. I felt more awake and ready for the last few hours of driving, even in the heavy rain. Darla brought out a milkshake. On the house, she said as she put it in front of me.
Don't drink that. Don't drink
I'd lie if I said I was put off. I was excited for the free milkshake and slurped it down. Honestly, despite what happened next, it was objectively a delicious milkshake.
He drugged you.
Darla cleared my plates and left me the check. Every time she came to my table, she kept stroking my arm. When she dropped the bill off, I tried to dodge her touch, and her demeanor changed. She went from sickly sweet to angry with me. As I wrote the tip amount and signed my name, my head felt heavy. The room started spinning. I looked at the waitresses. They weren't paying me any mind, except Darla glancing over at me every so many seconds. I tried to stand up to leave, but collapsed, and everything went black.
They're just gonna end it right there?
When I woke up, I was lying in a motel bed. My hands were handcuffed to the bedpost. I looked around.
He got took. He got took. She took him. This man got his dooney snatched. God. She did eat him.
Around.
She's the dealer.
Sun shined through the curtains. Someone had folded my clothes and placed them on the desk across from the bed, and someone was moving around in the bathroom. Hello? I called out. Darla's head popped out of the bathroom. Oh, you're finally awake. She walked out with smeared makeup. I tried to pull at my restraints, but I couldn't get out of them. They were looped around the bedpost in a way that I couldn't just stand up and run.
She robbed this man for his
what happened? My heart beat against my chest as I looked around. It looked bad, and I had no idea what happened. What time is it? It's about 10:30. She smiled and sat beside me, placing her hand on my chest. I tried to shake her off, but her hand remained. Don't worry, I told your wife. You know, you gave all of us in that diner quite the scare when you collapsed. The cooks helped me take you across the street to the motel to sleep. I guess you were more tired than you thought. Why am I like this? She smiled deviously. Why do you think? She winked. I need to call my wife. She reminded me she already talked to her. Panic rose in my chest and it became hard to breathe. I kept wondering why I was only in my boxers over and over in my head.
She took
Darla
you
stood up
Smeet,
to retrieve
bro.
my phone from the desk. She sat beside me, curled up against my restrained arms. She looped one hand around my neck and started playing with my hair. Darla showed me the messages she sent to my wife. She sent spicy photos of her and me together, and multiple videos of her on top of me. She didn't include my face in all the pictures and videos, so you wouldn't know I was passed out. I wanted to vomit. Get away from me! I yelled, and I violently shook my body to get her away from me. Uncuff me, now! I demanded. Darla looked confused, but then her expression relaxed. Don't worry. When you meet Jack, you'll feel better. Who the hell is Jack? Darla was offended. My son? I told you all about him last night. Trust me, when you meet him, you'll know you made the right choice. What choice? I spit at her. I passed out and woke up like this in a motel room, trapped with your decaying ass. Now she was really offended. She slapped me.
Mm.
I became increasingly agitated, demanding that she uncuff me. She seemed appalled at the idea, and her eyes illuminated with an idea. I know what will make you feel better. She crawled on top of me, straddling me. No! I yelled. Get off! I twisted and turned my body so she couldn't sit comfortably. Once she was off, I kicked her in the stomach and she
There you
stumbled
go.
backward. She fell and hit her head on the corner of the desk. Darla? I called out. No response. Relief flooded my system. I told myself it would be
What
okay
relief? You're
because
still
I would
locked
be able
up.
to say I killed her in self-defense. My mind immediately went to my wife. She saw those horrible images. There was no guarantee she would believe me about what happened, and I prayed she would. I waited for hours for the cleaners to enter the room. They were startled to see a man handcuffed to the bed and a dead woman on the floor. Thankfully, one of them grabbed a towel to cover me. The police took a while since we were in the middle of nowhere. They uncuffed me and they took my statement. They believed me since I was trapped, and I had proof of Darla's actions in my messages to my wife. When I called my wife, I could tell she had been crying. She weakly asked me what happened. I told her, and I begged her to believe me and work through this with me. She understood, and was more concerned about me and
I ain't gonna hold you. Maturity. He got a mature woman. If she was immature, she would have said no and hung up on him and called him a low down, cheating, dirty dog and all that. But real talk, this man got diddied. She drugged that man and took his
what
doonies.
I just endured. She told me she knew I would never cheat on her with an old hag like Darla.
Thank God for that.
After we talked, I knew I would be okay. And Darla got what she deserved. However, I think of her son from time to time and wonder what happened to him. Hopefully, he found a more stable caretaker.
I never thought a smell could ruin my life, but it did. The moment my fiance David switched to that damn natural deodorant, everything changed. It all started 4 months ago, a decision he claimed was for the environment, for his health, for some grand cause I couldn't quite wrap my head around. But the stench that followed was anything but natural. From the very first day, it was unbearable. We had been together for 2.5 years, engaged for 6 months, and living together for a year. I loved David dearly, but this new smell tested the limits of my affection. As a forensic pathologist, I'm used to unpleasant odors, but this was different. This was a relentless, overpowering stench that clung to everything, pervading our home, our car, even my clothes. "David, you need to do something about this," I told him one night, the air between us thick with his scent. "It's getting out of hand." He looked at me with defiance. "It's not the deodorant. You're just used to all those chemicals. This is how a real man smells." I wanted to laugh at the absurdity,
Bro, you
but it
stink,
was
you
no
stink.
laughing matter. Our once warm and cozy apartment now felt like a prison. I couldn't sleep in the same bed as him anymore. I started avoiding him, retreating to the spare bedroom at night. During the day, I found excuses to stay out of the house. The worst part was the public humiliation. We took a bus trip one weekend, and the stares were unbearable. People wrinkled their noses, whispered to each other, and shot us dirty looks. I felt like I was living in a nightmare. My love for David turning into a sick joke. "David, everyone notices," I pleaded with him after the trip. "It's not just me. Can't you just try something else?" He scoffed, waving off my concerns. "They're all shills for the chemical industry. This is a conspiracy."
Yeah,
I
bro.
was at my wit's end. Our flat became a battleground of denial and frustration. I couldn't bring friends over, couldn't enjoy a meal without gagging. It was as if an invisible wedge had driven us apart, one that neither of us could see but both could smell. One evening, I returned home to an even stronger odor. It wasn't just David's usual smell, it was something worse. The air was thick, almost palpable, My eyes watered as I stepped into the living room. David, are you here? I called out, my voice muffled by the stench. No response. Panic gripped me as I moved through the apartment. Finally, I found him in the bathroom, unconscious on the floor, an empty bottle of the natural deodorant by his side.
Did he drink it?
David! I screamed, shaking him. He groaned, slowly coming to. What happened? You passed out! What did you do? I demanded, fear turning my voice into a shrill cry. I don't know. I just felt dizzy, he muttered, looking dazed. I called an ambulance and they rushed him to the hospital.
Deodorant.
The doctors discovered that the deodorant contained a high level of an unknown toxin. It had built up in his system, causing severe reactions. David spent a week in the hospital. During that time, he finally admitted he had been wrong. The deodorant had been poisoning him, and by extension, us. It took a near-death experience for him to see the truth. When he returned home, we threw away every natural product he had
Near-death experience for him to realize that he stank. Crazy.
bought. The smell gradually faded, and our apartment began to feel like a home again. We celebrated our wedding a year later, surrounded by friends and family. David had returned to a regular deodorant, and the only smell that day was the sweet scent of flowers and fresh beginnings.
I don't really see how that's a horror story.
My younger sister Ginny and I have birthdays just a few days apart, so we
Oh,
always have to share our birthday parties. Even though I'm 5 years older, every year I was stuck doing whatever Ginny wanted to do. I always felt like such an afterthought, and it drove me crazy. I decided that this year would be different. I was finally turning 18, and I didn't need any more family parties. I pulled my parents aside and told them to just have a party for Ginny. I'd rather go on a camping trip with my friends instead. At first, my parents seemed to understand where I was coming from. Deep down, they knew how much they favored my sister. They were about to give me their permission when Ginny charged into the room and demanded that I stay for her party.
bro.
She went into a complete
No, this is a brat. She just gonna torture her sister the whole time. No, bro. Okay. I ain't gonna lie. I pissed my pants off. I literally run out of the house. I'm not staying.
meltdown, screaming about how I was ruining her special day. It was obnoxious and obviously exaggerated, but my parents had to placate her. They said Jenny could have her party by herself, but she could also come on the camping trip with me.
No,
I
sir.
couldn't believe it. They thought this was some big compromise, even though it just meant Jenny now had 2 parties instead of 1. I was so angry, but I had to go along with it or they wouldn't give me any presents. I went up to my room and called my boyfriend Trevor to tell him the bad news. He seemed really disappointed, suggesting that we reschedule for the next weekend. I was done changing my plans, so I told him no. That Friday, Jenny and I arrived at the campsite. Trevor was waiting there to greet us, but I didn't see any of our other friends. He sheepishly told us that everyone else canceled after they found out my sister was coming. Sure they did, Jenny said, refusing to believe that she was so unliked. Instead, she accused him of uninviting them himself. It was a weird thing to say. Trevor, unfortunately, hated when people corrected him, so the conversation very quickly turned into an argument. Eventually, I had to step in.
My thing
I
is,
told Jenny to wait in the tent while Trevor and I went for a walk.
I'm not gonna lie to you. My thing is, to the parents, I would have been like, one, I'm older, 18. You want me to take my younger sibling around older kids? Granted, that would have made them question everything of what we're doing, but at the same time, no. He needs to hang around. She needs to hang around people her age, not around my age range. Why do I have to tag? Matter of fact, to my brother, I love you. Tavion, I love you to death. But my mother did that with Tavion. My little brother, she did that with him. She literally made me take him everywhere, which I resented a little bit, which made me anger toward him, which is not his fault. It's really the parents' fault on that one. If you do that with your kids, you are terrible. Do not do that. I'm not judging you, but at the same time, let your kids bond with each other. Don't force it, or they won't bond at all.
She argued for a second, but then she gave in. I said some pretty mean things to make her stay. So we left her there. Trevor and I had been to this area before, so I wasn't really paying attention to where we were going. I just followed Trevor. Eventually, we got to a clearing that I didn't recognize. The trees were
Construction.
especially twisted, and there was a deep crack in the ground, wide enough for someone to fall into. This was not a good place to stop. Trevor must have disagreed because he spread a picnic blanket on the uneven ground and laid out cheese and crackers. I sat across from him as we talked and ate. It felt great to be away from everyone, just the two of us. I was still disappointed that the rest of our friends bailed, but it was honestly better this way. Trevor and I were so comfortable together. Then I noticed something weird. Trevor kept mentioning Jenny and my family. He kept twisting the conversation back to how much I prioritized my family over everyone else. I'd never realized how much that upset him.
He I ain't gonna lie to you, because he ain't getting no doonies. Cut heated because he ain't getting none. That's all that is.
Trevor's mood just kept getting darker and darker. He was ruining our perfectly good picnic. I'd seen him go off on his little rages before, but they'd never been directed at me.
You sitting there just
I
taking it.
tried to calm him down, to explain that I'd have less family pressure now that I was 18, but he wasn't listening. It was like he wanted to get into an argument. I stood up and started to walk away, but Trevor jumped to his feet and grabbed me. "Let me go!" I screamed. But I knew that we were too far away for Jenny to hear me. Normally, she would have followed us, but after the way I demanded that she stay at the tent, I knew that she'd stay put. "I'll never let you go," he said. "You'll be mine forever." And with that, he shoved me to the side. I hadn't realized how close I was to the wide crack in the ground.
Mm.
My shoulder slammed into the rock edge, and then I toppled about 12 feet into the hole. My entire left side was screaming with pain. The chasm was dark and narrow. I felt like I was in a coffin. There were roots jutting out of the walls, enough for me to climb back up. I grabbed one and pulled, but I didn't have the strength to lift myself up. One of my arms was definitely broken.
Where is he at the
From the
top?
surface, Trevor looked down and smiled. "It looks like you're trapped in there. And I'm the only one who knows." I begged for him to help me get out, but he just shook his head. Now that he had me all to himself, he wouldn't let me go. He casually sat on the edge, his legs dangling just out of reach, and explained what would happen next. He'd return to Jenny and tell her I got lost. Then he'd make sure to send the search parties in the opposite direction. And every day he'd come back to visit me with food that he'd drop into the hole. Just as he was explaining his insane plan, he abruptly stopped talking, gasped for a second, and then toppled forward into the hole. Unlike me, he landed head first, passing out on impact. I looked back up and saw Jenny standing at the edge of the hole. She'd pushed him
one
over.
time.
"I was following you," she said. "I knew you shouldn't trust him." Then she lowered down the thickest vine she could find and encouraged me to climb up with one hand. Once I was within reach, she grabbed onto my shirt and pulled me the rest of the way.
You gonna get
We
up?
sat together on the edge of that dark pit.
One
She
time.
wrapped me in a tight hug. We started talking about her own birthday party next week. It was going to be horse-themed, an idea that I genuinely hated. She asked me if I was going to come. "Of course," I said. "We're sisters."
Sisters in crime. I mean, he was gonna leave you there too, though. I still stand on what
The
I said
music
about the
was
sibling
set
thing,
low.
but this the one time it
Typical.
worked out.
Just how they always played music so that one could hear
look
the voices
fake.
of
Nah, go back.
patrons drinking at their tables across.
Go back, go back.
Music was set low. Typical.
She looked baked. Well, look at her eyes. She gave me that bit off the freshest packers off. All right.
Just how they always played music so that one could hear the voices of patrons drinking at their tables across the room. I always
He
loved
baked
it there
too.
since I found the spot on a cold night out 3 weeks ago. The atmosphere was cool, just like the 90s blues that filled the air with its patient crooning. I was on my second drink. The first had been a potent combination of tequila, lemon, and salt. It had hit my stomach and
Okay.
pulled out the anxiety from my core.
Tequila. Okay.
In a way that was unusual, I felt more at ease with the crowd around me. I was staring at the plant on the table when our eyes hooked on each other. It was the most stunning moment of my life in months. I was sure my heart skipped more than a couple of beats at this muse of a
It
moment.
ain't the alcohol, bro.
Her
I ain't gonna
red
lie to you.
dress risked a slit down the side that showed off her beauty. I downed the second shot before me in a blink, dusted my suit, and approached her with all the pretense of an important figure as I could muster. Our talk was smooth, easy chatter, like minds that had found each other in the strangest of places. She mentioned her name was Jennifer, and I told her my name, David. I was a writer pining for company, and she yearned for companionship. I was hooked indeed. All of my loneliness evaporated with each sentence that billed our conversation. I could not deny myself the ache for her scent. She perceived it in me and said we could go back to her place.
You
What
said it
fear
like
could
that.
I have? She did not seem dangerous. I had seen women like her in many cities of the world.
Shit, bullshit. Women be getting off. A lot of men just don't understand. Like, bro, we are not safe. These women be getting off, and then they can play innocent and get away with it. Here, a basket. Let me stop, bro.
I awoke each morning with the smell of their body in my breath. There was no debate as to the invitation. I have Netflix, she said to me on the drive home, as though it were supposed to make me excited.
Goofy, nigga. She said she got Netflix. They ain't bring up Netflix for no reason. He's trying to Netflix and chill, and he and the brain didn't register. Y'all are not watching that movie. You're not gonna make it through the whole movie. It's gonna be some strange things going on, but it ain't the movie. This ain't Stranger Things.
Visual stimulation, she clarified. It helps younger writers like me with inspiration. I sighed and contained myself until I was inside of her house.
Stimulation.
No dogs? Cats? I asked, puzzled by how quiet the house was. Almost as though the quiet was artificial, amplified deliberately to conceal some other problem. It was the first sign something was wrong, but I had not thought about it too deeply. No, just me, she answered, shrugging as she walked around the sitting room, setting up the television set as I sat on the couch. What do you watch on Netflix? I didn't know. I don't watch television. So I asked her to put on her favorite show, and I'll enjoy it with her. I added that I hope it's as good as her self-published work, an excerpt of which I had read during our ride back to her house. She laughed at the joke and promised to make sure it's a movie I like. Then she stopped abruptly and stared down a door which had been shut when we had walked in.
It do something.
I followed her
Who
line of
walked
sight, and the door was open. That's weird, I blurted, before I could recollect my thoughts on what was happening around me. A sense of what was amiss gnawed at my gut, and I had an urge to leave. But I thought against it because it would be rude to leave my host's house at such a short notice.
Nah, bro. Get out of there. Get out.
Jennifer tried to smile, but her face betrayed a mirthless sense of confusion. My heart started to beat faster than it usually would. The adrenaline fed my senses with such a stimulation as I had never felt before.
Get out of there.
In that moment, knowing something terrifying was about to happen and not knowing how, I broke into a sweat. Is your house haunted? I asked quietly, hoping for humor to break down the suffocating tension in the room. No, it's not, she replied and gulped. I knew she was telling the truth, but the way she stared, it was a blank stare into nothing, into the dark passageway as though there was some force conjuring her attention to it. Are you possessed? I was able to rein my thoughts in with some regulation
this man is
before the
goofy.
words left my mouth. My instinctive reaction was of utter terror, and my feet felt the compulsion to escape. But the writer part of me wanted to see it through, however frightening the night ended. God, no, she muttered repeatedly, as though it helped the fact that I was almost shitting my pants seated on her couch. "Jennifer!" I barked, and she jumped, startled to even look at me. Her eyes watered up, and she struggled to manage her attention between me and the open passageway. "Leave, David," she said to me. I was hesitant. "What about Netflix?" I said, beside myself with dread but unwilling to show it. I could feel it. She had bled her fear on me, and even the nails of my fingers had gone cold from the infection. It mattered more that I was afraid of what was happening because I did not know what was happening. Jennifer picked her hands up and started to move forward in gingerly steps. Each step was like watching a horror movie play out in front of me with real-life consequences. My belly.
All my men out there. How long would it took y'all to dip? For all my females out there, this was the other way around. How long would it took y'all to dip too? You ain't got to tell me twice. She ain't had to tell me once. And she sat there and looked stupid after I said I'm going and didn't get up and run with me. Whatever's in there with you, you can handle it on your own. It's not spineless. It's called being smart. I don't know what's over there. We ain't got no gun. It's dark. I'm not walking in there. I can't see. I'd rather live than die. She's goofy as fuck. Why is she walking towards the door? And he even more bigger goofy because he's sitting there. When she get murked, he next.
Folded in on itself, and my stomach juices rolled up to the back of my tongue. "Please, don't hurt him. I'm tired of you doing this. How did you find me?" Jennifer cried as she approached the door. Gently as she could, she lay her hands on the door to close it. A hand from inside the dark passageway reached out and pulled her by the hair. I jumped in my seat and scrambled to the floor in sheer fright. The thoughts in my head went wild from the surge. The lashing noise of Jennifer's body whipping against the floor set my entire body on alert. I turned around as a monstrous man, eyes red with rage, slipped out of the darkness. "You can never get rid of me. I'll kill every man that touches you until you want me again," the man cried. "Hey, man, I apologize. I didn't know she was yours." I begged for my life, seeing no sense in trying to escape, as he looked like he would outrun me. He slipped his hands into his pants quietly and retrieved a long, glistening knife.
And that's when
"I'll cut you up," he said, "limb from limb,
my mouse tool,
just like the others."
I would have put all 15
my life
shells
flashed
into his
before
skull.
my eyes when he started to approach me. I thought of everything I had done and the life that it had gifted me. Childhood reeled into teenage years and adulthood. It was all painfully fast, and I awaited death with bated breath, my head drumming loud.
Bro, the fact that you even let that happen, bro. What? I don't like this dude. I don't like this dude, bro. You lame. You lame. I'm not dissing him because he soft. We established that. But to lay down and die like that, I can't align myself with or respect. Bro, I get you're scared. At least bust him upside the head with something. That girl just got ragdolled in there. We didn't even get to see that. I know she looking busted. And you just over here, I'm gonna close my eyes and pray that it don't hurt. Make it quick. Lazy mind.
Loudly, and my heart almost pumping out of my chest, I had surrendered to my fate. Before I heard the loud gunshot echo through the atmosphere.
Amen.
With a single bullet to the center of his head, I saw the monster of a man collapse to his face in front of me. Jennifer held the gun in her trembling hands and muttered words of how she was tired of her volatile ex who would not let her be, chasing her from city to city and making her life a living hell. She cussed at his body and kicked him. Then she turned to me. "Leave, David," she said. Shaken by the traumatic experience, I left straight for the hospital for some help from the horrifying experience I had just experienced.
Bro. bro, on bro. He is the lamest I know on horror stories. He's the worst one so far. I mean, there's a few others like that one, the Thanksgiving one. If you haven't seen that one, the family that let that one boy Teddy up and then they finally jumped him. But no, he the first. He's the first one that ever exceed my expectations on how sorry you could be. Kudos go out to the lady in red. She handled her business. She finally got rid of this man, which she should have did earlier. Shout out to Broccoli Animations for this story that y'all gonna see tonight. Y'all want to see more horror reactions because I'm trying to run these back. This was something slight, something slight. I picked it at random. The story was interesting though. Like, comment, subscribe if you want to see more. Out you.